about what the city is trying to do. And basically what we are trying to do is repair and improve the water and sewer system that's in our system. We have 2 council members here. They're listening in, and we will make a decision, the final decision, on June 18th. And so we had a chance to talk to residents in the past. We had a tour of our facilities, and today we want to get the perspective from the business. So we're going to divide the presentation into 2 parts. I'm going to talk a little about the finance of how it operates, and then Ron will take over and tell you the condition of our water system. So first, I want to talk about the process to repair our city. There's more than just the water and sewer. Anytime we look at the streets, the parks, facilities, and so forth, we have to identify the need, and we did that. We've had some engineering studies done. Public Works Department looked at the water system and the sewer system, and they developed a report. And from there, we evaluate and see how much it costs to repair the system, when we can do it, and what's needed to be repaired. Then the next part is the community involvement. We want to discuss it with the community. We want to discuss it at council, and we said, this is what it looks like. We make adjustments to see, if it's really needed and so forth. So, but we want your input and so forth. What's unique with water, sewer, and refuse when we look at the repair of the system is it's required to inform the residents. And this is actually a really good process. We call it the Proposition 218 process. It's a legal process that we're mandated to notify every resident end user in Monterey Park. Then if the community and the city council develop a proposal and they move forward with it, then we proceed with the repairs. Typically, the city would put together a 5-year, what we're looking at here is a 5-year water and sewer capital improvement program. We list out the projects that we have for the next 5 years, for the water projects and sewer projects, and we do annual evaluation of that. We keep track of how we're doing each year, and then we within 5 years, we'll tell you how we're doing. And then we also have to look at the finances too. Unfortunately, money doesn't grow on trees, they don't come out of pipelines, so we have to generate enough revenue, collect enough from our community to pay for our system. And again, so that's what it comes down to. You evaluate the system every 3 to 5 years. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Prop 218 process. And at first, cities really did not like this process because we thought, my gosh, this is going to be a lot of work, there's a lot of concern. But it's actually really good because this is what it brings, a dialogue that's happening. Every resident knows, every customer knows about the situation. And we have to, we have to inform the property owners and utility customers, and we have an opportunity to protest. If you don't agree with the rates, you think this is not the right strategy, then you have an opportunity to protest. So again, I mentioned it applies to water, wastewater, and solid waste. In Monterey Park, it affects 16,359 properties. And what I think is most important is the rate increase may not exceed cost of services and the system maintenance by law. So by law, we cannot just raise the rate some number that's out of the sky. It has to tie to the repairs that's needed. If the repair is, what we're proposing is $100 million, council and the community cannot say, let's raise it to be $200 million just because. It has to tie to something. So that really connects things together. So Monterey Park has a much needed water and sewer repairs. The system dates back to the 1920s. That's a long time ago. It was not built for growth. When you're laying pipes into the system back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, you didn't expect this population. So it's putting more and more burden on the system. And we have not been doing a good job at maintaining it. And Ron will go more detail about this. But pipeline breaks are increasing, which is a sign of aging system. Emergency repairs are 4 or 5 times more expensive than scheduled replacement. Just like your car, just like your home, if you don't do the routine maintenance on it, it just costs a lot more to repair later on. And that's what we're trying to prevent. We want to build an efficient system for our community. What concerns me is 65% of the sewer lines have never been inspected. and Ron's going to show you some gory pictures later on. But that's, you know, pipes going back to the 1940s, 50s, 60s. No one has even looked at them. So we don't know what the conditions are. We don't know if it's blocked or not. So it's a serious issue for us to deal with. So the studies that we have are two parts. There's a $12.8 million in sewer CIP that's needed. And like I just mentioned, that's only on 35% of the sewer lines that we inspected. So this one, it may go up later on, but we're just focused right now on 5 years. We just gotta get some revenues in, and I'll tell you a little bit more later. And then $100 million in fire CIP identified, and we'll get more detail about that. So the council, what staff presented to the city council, 3 alternatives and how to generate enough revenues to repair our water system. The first alternative is sort of like conservative. Let's fix it as soon as we can so that we can avoid costly maintenance or costly repairs. So the $100 million we were proposed, well, the staff, one of the alternatives is $100 million in 12 years, which brings in $42 million in the first 5 years. And that would raise the rates too much, to too high a level, that it wasn't that successful or it wasn't that popular. The next alternative presented in the study was more reasonable. It's $100 million CIP for 19 years for $26.5 million. And that seems more realistic, but council looked at that and said that even that has a much more, too much of an impact on the community. So there was another proposal, which is a more gradual increase. This one would say, you know, next year, go to the rate, that's perfect, and then we'll go from there. But this one gives you a gradual increase, which gives businesses more time to adjust for the rate increases so that it won't be such an impact. So the proposal, alternative CC, is $100 million in 20 years, which still brings in $26 million within the first 5 years. Again, the rates increase gradually. So this for residential, I don't know if you can see it, I'll try to highlight it. Here's a 3 alternative, an existing bill. Right now, residents are paying an average. The average resident is paying $28 per month for water services. Not all Monterey Park residents. There are some that is served by a different water agency, and they're already paying $53 and $54. And then around the other area, the average is like $55, $60, $60, and $61. So you can read this 2 ways. One is Monterey Park residents getting a great deal, but what you don't get is you don't get the repairs in the system. So that's what we're hoping. So here's the proposal, and I'm going to stick with this one here, the alternative that City Council presented. So it proposed to jump from $28 to $50, and then 60, 70, 90, 83, and that collects the $26 million. And as you can see, the $50 proposed is still below the existing of the others. So we're basically, council proposing, bringing it up to par with all the other agencies. This is commercial. This one's probably what you're most interested in. And we put together a lot of examples. The water rate's based on basically 2 things. It's your meter size and your level of consumption. So here, a drugstore, decent sized drugstore, they only have a 3/4, they don't use much water, it's just basically the restroom. So 3/4 inch meter and 13 units. Their current bill is about $42, and it'll jump up to $53, $64, $75, $84, $91. So that's for a business, not too much of an impact. I talked to someone about an HOA down here is if you have like a 100-unit apartment and so forth, they're probably about a 4-inch meter, and they're consuming 2,500 units of water. That's a lot of water. That's about, I'm thinking about 4 swimming pools a day. I think even more. It's just a lot. I mean, but it's a lot of units. So their average bill right now is about $6,400, and then it goes up to $66, $79, and so forth. Okay? And what it is, what's good is gradual, and it's also good that it gives you the opportunity to conserve water. You implement technology to conserve water. So church, again, $300 to $355. So the initial year change is not that much of an impact. So what can you do? For the residential side, definitely conservation is the way to go. I mean, the state right now is talking about the drought, so we really want to conserve water. That's the way to go. So definitely water your lawn and garden less frequently. Install low volume toilets. Install smart sprinklers. Only run full loads of dishes and clothes washer. And on the business side, the commercial side, definitely there's ways that you conserve water. Just like the utilities that goes up right now, your water, your cable bill, the cost of food, businesses have to adjust. And for us, we are very concerned that we want to get a good system in that would not stop your business. So, for you can educate employees about your importance of water conservation, do leak surveys and water audits, and we can help you out with that. Install low flow toilets and urinals, plant low water use grass and plants, and definitely use more energy efficient dishwashers, ice machines, cooking systems, laundry washers. So again, we're proposing a plan, a gradual plan to adjust the rates so that we can rebuild the water system, the sewer system, because it's a much needed repair. And with that, we're working with you. And then with this, I'm going to hand it over to Ron to talk about the condition of our water and sewer system.
Thanks, Chutai. It was just brought to my attention that some of you wanted some handouts. My apologies. I'm usually pretty good about kind of preparing that. I do not have handouts for today's presentation. However, there's a couple options we have here. On the website, this presentation is actually on the website. As soon as you open up our website, to the left-hand side at the very bottom, it says water, sewer, and trash capital improvement plan. Once you click on that, it has all the documents related to this specific 218 process and the rate increase in the capital improvement projects. Second of all, if you don't want to go through that whole gamma of going through the website, you can leave your name with the chamber, and I can give the chamber a copy of this presentation and they can shoot it out, or I can do it personally. Whatever suits your best convenience, I'll be able to do that for you. Okay. So moving through the water system, just some real basics here. I want to get through the presentation really quick so that way it gives you enough time to ask questions. Just real basic, we get our water from the groundwater basin here. The basin basically stretches from the foothills down to La Puente, East LA to Pomona. That's roughly the jurisdiction. You can kind of see it here. There's roughly about 44 water companies, water purveyors that pump out of this basin. Prior to 1972, basically everybody that had any type of well in the ground or ability to take water out, they were able to do that. There was no really management, so-called, of the basin. And if you know anything about water, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. And people are fighting over water prior to 1972. So as part of a court adjudication, they formed Watermaster. So Watermaster is basically the administrator and the management group that takes care of the basin. They determine when it's safe to pump at specific levels. They keep track of the water that's coming in and out of the basin, and they are the administrators. There's 3 ways of getting water into the basin: State Water Project, Colorado River, or natural rainfall. And also by conveying water from the dams. Right? So that's kind of really the generic 101 of how the water gets kind of into the basin. There's a lot more detail, but I don't want to bore you with that. I'll move on. Just some of the system details. We have 12 groundwater wells that are over in Rosemead. All our wells are in Rosemead. We pump about a mile and a half across town into Monterey Park. We have 3 treatment facilities. Back in the days, part of maybe how we farmed our land and some of our bad habits as communities around the area, the groundwater became contaminated. There are different contaminants that are in the groundwater. So each water purveyor has to treat the water to specific specifications that's determined by the Department of Health Services. So the water that you receive is certified by the Department of Health Services. And the water companies are required to submit reports, consumer confidence reports, to all the residents that are in that community. And also they submit reports to the Department of Health Services also. That's kind of the checks and balances to make sure that you're getting good, clean water. You can see we have different types of mains, 2-inch to 36-inch mains, 136 miles. We have 13 reservoirs. And just for conversation purposes, reservoirs, they're basically for two factors: for fire protection and storage. Right? Without reservoirs, basically your system's just pumping around. You have no reliability. In case a fire comes up, you draw down the water in the reservoir. If emergency comes up or you have an earthquake, you have storage there. Pipes break, you have water in the system that you can actually get to different areas in the system. So reservoirs are very important, just as much as wells, getting it out of the ground to getting it across town. Booster stations, we have 11 booster stations. Because our geography in our hills, we have to have stations that pump it from one level to another. 13,000 water connections. San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, we have a connection with them, and we can also receive water from them. And we have emergency connections with San Gabriel Valley Water Company, MWD, and California Water Service. We serve 62,000 customers, over 1,000 businesses. We produce 8.6 million gallons on an average, and then we consume, and this is a key factor between these two numbers, we consume 7.8 million gallons. That's what we register on our meters throughout our system.
Average of what?
Pardon me?
On average of what?
Average across all the meters in our system.
On a day, on a year?
On a day.
Okay.
So with that, you can see the difference between the two. There's a lot of water loss in between. On an average, most systems have a water loss. A good system that's pretty efficient is between 3 to 5%. We're a lot higher. Our system's a lot higher. It's about 9%. It can be anything. It can be from meters that are old, that are slow in registering the water going through it. It could be water main breaks that we have that is unaccounted water. We could have people that are using water from fire hydrants that we do not meter. They just take the water from the fire hydrant. There's various different ways that water gets lost. So that's a key component right now that we're really concerned about, the unaccounted water loss, and also the loss of revenue. Okay. The concerns are, like it's mentioned here, 72% of the pipeline was built before 1960. That's a long time ago. I know there's people that are experts out there that say, pipeline can last 100 years or even more. True in some cases, but there's a lot of factors that are involved when you're looking at pipeline. Characteristics of the water, the type of soil that surrounds the pipe. There's a lot of criteria that affect the reliability of the pipeline. So, to say that there's a clear-cut way of putting in a pipeline or constructing this or doing whatever it may be, it's not that clear-cut. It's old. The system is old. We need to put some money into our system. Increase of water failures. I mentioned water main breaks. They're on the rise. 25 to 36 main breaks. They can range anywhere from 4-inch lines up to 8-inch lines. And majority of our main breaks are on distribution lines. So distribution lines, we're talking about the lines that actually feed customers. So when we have to fix a line, we have to take a line out of service for X amount of time. And like I mentioned in some of the other presentations, it never happens when you're at work. Never. It always happens when you're getting ready to cook, when you're getting ready to take a shower, when you're getting ready to go to work. I've had people come and yell at us because they've got suds on their hair and shut the water off. But we gave them notification that we have to shut the water off in order to fix the line. Right? So there is a huge inconvenience, and that's just on the residential side. You can imagine what it would be like on the commercial side, which many of you are from the commercial sector. I remember several years in consecutive years, or maybe not, but marine calendars had to be put out of service for water. I think it was during Thanksgiving or during a holiday. And that didn't just happen once. It happened twice. And taking that line out of service to Marie Callender's, cooking, there's a lot of impacts to businesses because once you cut the water off, Department of Health Services says that you can't serve food, you can't do a lot of things, right? So there's a huge impact to businesses when the lines go down. And I'm not here to scare you, I'm just telling you the facts. These are just the facts, right? 50 miles of pipeline needed to replace. There's inefficiencies, like I talked about water meters. We have a SCADA system, which is the brains of the system. Basically, it controls everything. From a laptop, you're able to turn wells off, boosters on. You can control the levels of reservoirs. You can control the amount of water going to different places of the city. That SCADA system has been in operation for quite some time. And like technology, we all know laptops, programs, they always want to upgrade. They always need, a new type of technology or program that comes in. This system is no different. We have to spend money to upgrade it. And all the hardware, the antennas that are specific boosters, reservoirs, pumping stations, those are getting to be obsolete. They're telling us that we have to replace them. They can no longer support the parts and the replacement of these. We have to go out and get new ones. We have 4 reservoirs right now that we have concerns about because they are made out of concrete. They're reinforced concrete. Basically, they're spun with steel around the reservoir and vertically. Back in the days, that was the way that they would build reservoirs, right? Especially when you're building them above ground. Now, they build it with steel. It's a lot quicker, it's a lot more efficient, and they last longer, truthfully. And they're not subject to seismic activity versus concrete. As soon as you have seismic activity, you start showing cracks. They may be exterior cracks, interior cracks, but after a while, they start leaking. That is what has happened at 4 of our reservoirs. 2 of the reservoirs are out of service as we speak. They've been out of service for approximately 3 years. Now, you don't notice it as residents and business owners because it doesn't affect your service. It affects storage. And what does storage do? Fire and emergency. So as Shu talked about, we're looking at trying to raise some money to take care of a lot of the projects that we have. $16.7 million in projects at Delta Booster Station. This is over that 20-year period. $5.4 million for Pine Tree Reservoir, and $6.8 million to replace wells 1 and 3. These wells were drilled and built back in the 50s. You can rehabilitate them, you can continue to give them TLC, but after a while, you're spending money that you really shouldn't be. You should actually be drilling another well and just taking that one out of service. We're looking to replace 9,600 feet of pipe, which is 18.2 miles, for fire flow improvements. The area that I will show you in the upcoming slide has several criteria other than just fire flow. Deficient in size of pipe, it's old, the material, and the type of soil that's contained around it. It's just a candidate for replacement right away. And in this program, as we replace all these different pipelines, it also mitigates some of the emergency repairs that we've been doing over in the past. We know the areas that are bad. I can tell you right now, De La Fuente, right here, 2 blocks away, is a huge candidate for replacement. Because that's put together with just repair clamps. Just clamps, keeping it together. And I know everybody on that street can attest to it, right to this day, that they have been inconvenienced tremendously over the years. Talked about water meters. So here's a quick shot of the different zones we have. I talked about boosting to different hillside areas. This is a quick shot of what our zones look like. This is a gentleman working in a trench. He basically has to replace this whole section of line because in some cases, if it's just a hole or it's around the pipe, we're able to put a clamp on it. If we can't put a clamp on it and it runs longitudinal to the pipe, we have to take the whole pipe out. So that means your whole surface goes down for that whole block. Sewer systems. I know you guys have been dying to talk about sewer systems. $12.8 million of capital improvement we're looking at. As Chu said, we still have 65% that needs to be videoed, and we've only inspected 35. So in that 35, we're estimating to spend about $12.8 million, right, because of that inspection. And not only are we looking to repair those spots, we're also looking to inspect the other 65% that has not been inspected. We need to know what we're dealing with. Pipeline replacement, spot repairs, cured-in-place pipe installation. This is, a resident mentioned it at the last council meeting that you can line pipe. You can actually put the lining in there. You can do that in sewers. You can do that in water too. But when you do it in water, it restricts a lot of the flow that it was originally designed for. So when we get down that road, we'll have to see if those pipes are candidates for lining. And then we have a sewer system management program that's required by the state. Every month we have to submit a report to the state on any type of overflow or anything that has resulted in us not maintaining our system. And some of those overflows, if they go into a main waterway, and I'm not scaring you, this is the fact. If it goes into a major waterway, it's a fine. It's a fine by the regional board that we have to absorb. And when I say we, I talk about us as a community because I'm a resident here. Right? We have to pay for it. It comes out of the city funds. Right? This is really vague to see. This is on some old paper, drafting paper. That kind of shows you how old our system is on the sewer side. We've neglected it. On the water side, we have really good maps of every pipeline, services, meters. We know where everything's at. This is kind of like a hand-drawn map of areas, spots that we are concerned about, spots that have blockage problems because of grease or roots, so we have to maintain that on an ongoing basis. So you can kind of see what we've been dealing with on the sewer side of the house. You know, it's just an old, archaic way of assessing and keeping track of your infrastructure on the sewer side. 126 miles of sewer, 6-inch to 15-inch. We just transport the system, the sewage. Basically from residents, we take it into our sewer lines and we put it into the county lines. And then once it gets to the county lines, it goes to their treatment plant. Either it'll go down to the 60 and the 605, I don't know the name of the plant, or it'll go down to Long Beach. Basically, those are the two areas. We have access holes that allows us to get into the access holes and clean the lines. And then it's a gravity system, basically elevations that differ so drastically between 250 feet to 500 feet. So there's a lot of flow coming down in some areas because of the hills. This is one of the most recent sewage breaks that we've had. This is on Emerson and Atlantic. Basically, if you're familiar with the area, you have Ralph's parking lot that's right on the corner. Then there's a little house as you go easterly on Emerson, and then you have the recycle place. Well, that little house is the first connection. When this line got blocked, it actually came up through the connection and came out of the bottom of their clean out that happened to be open underneath their house. So they have a raised floor. So it basically flooded the bottom of their house. I wouldn't say they're lucky, but if you're dealing with this type of stuff, it's better underneath the house than inside of your house. Because at least you can mitigate it and clean up underneath your house and get it sanitized a lot easier than it is inside of your house. Inside of your house, mitigation is just so tough to get out all that sewage from your house. So here are the concerns. These are the facts. 65% of the system needs inspection. We need to do that. Sewer mains, they're over 100 years in service. Roots and grease are two major issues we deal with all the time on a daily basis. And when people say, well, you're dealing with grease, well, grease isn't always from commercial. In my experience, I've got over 20-something years of experience dealing with sewers, right? It's residential. Because we regulate the amount of the amount of grease by grease interceptors, traps that are within commercial. But in a residential home, what do? I mean, with the grease that we used for cooking. Only two ways to get rid of it: down the drain or in your trash. Which one's most the easiest way to get rid of it? While you're washing dishes, I'm sure, right? So it goes down there, goes into the sewer line. And if the sewer line has really a slow flow, the grease sits there for a while, right? Then it hardens up, turns into a solid, more grease comes down into the line, gets bigger, you have a blockage. Kind of like an artery, I guess. Right? I mean, I'm thinking about it, kind of like an artery in a way. So that's what we deal with in grease. And then we have trees. Some people deal with trees that are actually on their property that affect their lateral line coming from their house. So they have to repair that. We deal with the same thing. We have trees that are in the parkway that are ours that tend to get into our lines too. Roots love to go wherever the moisture is. And if you have any type of separation, or if they can just have a taste of that liquid, they're going to find it. And that's what we have to deal with the sewer lines. Right? Our staffing right now is very inadequate. We fund one person for our sewer system. And when I say 136 miles, that's a lot of system to try to maintain with one person. So what do? We supplement from other places, streets department, other people to get on the crew to clean the lines, to do repairs. So we really do not have enough staffing to be able to maintain the system. So what we're asking, not only are we asking to improve the system and spend some money, but we need some additional staffing. Inspection of the system, we have to be aggressive. I mean, as much as the number is very scary, we got to know what we're dealing with. We really need to go and inspect the other 65%. And then we need to account how much sewage that we're actually sending to the sanitation district, because we have to pay a fee to the sanitation district. And I'm not always so sure, when you're dealing with the county, state, fed, that they're always kind of, I wouldn't say honest, but upright, with the charges of fees. And then lastly, like any type of program or any type of utilities that you're dealing with, you have to have a program that's on the preventative side. What are we doing to outreach to businesses and the residents to prevent the grease from getting down into the sewer lines, right? And that's what the FOG program is, Fat, Oil, and Grease Program. And that's mandated by the state that you have to have a program like that. This is just a snapshot of what we've been able to inspect. And you can see there's a lot of areas here that have not been inspected. So that gives you a clear shot of what we have there. System damages, 1870, 1886 South Garfield. You can kind of see it. This stuff came back up through the drain, out of the toilets. That's why I said it's very hard to mitigate a sewer backup once it gets inside of your house. You have to rip out the floors. You have to take out the drywall. There's a lot of mitigation that has to be done. And you're looking at carpet, furniture. Some of these claims have reached up to $379,000. This is money that we have to pay. This is money that we've never budgeted. It's part of the claim system that we're responsible for this. And when I say we, the city, we have to do this. This is 99 Ranch. Same thing happened. I know when you look at it, you kind of say, oh, it's just a puddle of water. Well, this puddle of water is actually gray water and has all kinds of bacteria in it. And we're talking about a supermarket, right? So you can imagine what it takes to mitigate that in a market. Kind of the same picture, different area. This is kind of a gross picture. I know it's kind of old, but it really kind of depicts what we deal with. It almost looks like somebody's tonsils, but it can look like a lot of things. But this is all grease. This is the actual opening that has been constricted from the grease. So we have to go in there, take a high jetter line, and clean the line out. Another issue, you got a combination of a bunch of things. You have roots that are intruding to the top of the sewer line. You have grease that have kind of attracted to the roots, and you have toilet paper. Well, toilet paper, people say that it just pretty much breaks down. Well, it doesn't break down that fast. It's still hanging there. And this is what could happen if we have a backup. This is a manhole cover that actually has relieved all the sewage. This is not Monterey Park. I just wanted to show that this, in real world, this happens. It doesn't flow that much out, but it breaks the seal of the manhole and it comes out. And this is where the regional board is really hot on utility companies to make sure they have a program to maintain their system. Because they do not want this sewage water down the channels and into the beach. Right? That's basically the bottom line of that part. Okay, 5-year capital plan. I'm going to go through this real quick. All right. So we're looking at water lines here, main line replacement, Hellman and Garfield. It's basically the northeast side of town. Right? Garvey north, Garfield east, all the way to New Avenue. That's the first year. Second year, we're doing some more, all in that same area. All right. Then you're looking at some additional areas, not in that area, and then also we're looking at expanding our treatment plant, and then replacing some settling tanks, which is the concrete reservoir that I was talking about earlier. Right. Then we got the booster stations. This is the 5th year, and just to remind everybody, council is really adamant on making sure whatever money we raise in these rates, that every year we are monitoring what we're spending and what we're spending it on and showing proof. Because I think everyone's concerned, that they want to make sure if I have to pay this rate, that money is going to some good in the infrastructure. And we're responsible to make sure that that happens and we show proof of that. And after 5 years, it's regulated that we have to come back and reassess the whole program again. Right? So this increase is for the first 5 years. Even though we want a lot more money for 20 years, the 5 years is first out of the gate, and that's what council's going to look at. And then at the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, and especially the 5th year, they'll reassess it and say, okay, where are we at? So I'm just showing the project area, like I talked about, northeast side of town. And then here's the sewers. Sewers are kind of like all over the place, just because of the various different issues that we're dealing with. Grease, old lines, tree roots. Right. What I will also show you that in that first year, we're videotaping that other 65%. And every year, we need to continue videotaping. And then we're also making sure we come out of the gate with an aggressive outreach program. And then updating some of the state mandates that we have to do. And some of the same thing, some of these programs you have to continue. Year 3, pretty much the same. And 4 and 5. So when you look at this, some of these are solid lines. No, we're not going to replace all of Garfield. But it was so hard from such a big view to actually point out the spots. So this is all spot repairs in the different areas. It's not like a whole replacement of a line. So don't get scared about that when you look at that. It's just really hard for us to put those spot repairs in there. And then this is just one note. It's not just water and sewer. We're also talking about trash. And it's real basic on trash. Athens contract expires in 2017. It has a CPI increase in it, so every year, depending on what it is, they can increase the rates, right? Well, we collect the same revenue, since 2009. It's been the same cost. So you can imagine, as the cost is going up for Athens, we're collecting the same revenue for trash. So the line's going up, but the revenue is just, down here. So all we're asking is to basically catch up and maintain that same level of cost that we're paying athletes. And that's only 2017, and then what do we do then? Then we have to take a look at what the contract's going to be, and then reestablish what the trash rate's going to be. So that's all we're asking, for this. It's pretty straightforward. There's no smoke and mirrors or anything. It's pretty straightforward. And I think that's it.